offered that we're doing a pretty good job of getting people in Eau Claire. We've made a lot of progress over the last 15 years, revitalizing our downtown, attracting talent. We've done a lot of collaboration. We have a major downtown development that has just been completed that was a public-private partnership. And there's actually been interest in Eau Claire and West Central Wisconsin really since before I moved there in 2002 to have passenger rail service. The Rail Coalition was actually created in 1999 by community leaders who saw that we weren't on the map when Wisconsin was very active in trying to promote the Midwest Regional Rail Initiative. We were a bus connection to Toma, and we felt that with a strong economy in West Central Wisconsin, our contact with the Twin Cities, we needed to be more than that. And so for the first several years, we concentrated on getting included in planning. We actually eventually succeeded in that. We're actually located, we're on the maps in both the Wisconsin and Minnesota rail trends. Right. But being on a map in a book that's on the shelf doesn't necessarily have a rail service. So about the last 4 years, we decided to change course a little bit and look at things like how can we be more innovative in how we do passenger rail service. We looked at things like Brightline going on in Florida and economic development happening there, how they organize in other states like the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority in Maine and the Joint Powers Authorities in California. And we decided to see if could we take a public-private partnership approach to this. And we brought on Dave Christensen, who had just retired from MnDOT about 4 years ago, and started looking at that and said, could we structure things differently? Could we create the system, get some of the costs out of it, and create a financial and operating structure where revenues for the service could cover most or all of the costs and possibly some ancillary revenues. We also wanted to start with not just one train a day. You heard a lot today about having frequency. We felt we need at least 4 trains a day between Eau Claire and the Twin Cities. And we wanted to have a positive working relationship with the operating railroad. We are on the tracks of the Union Pacific, which is headquartered in Omaha. They've actually put a lot of money into that track in the last several years. They've upgraded it quite a bit. They've even put in PTC, which we need to pass through service. And we talked to them about, okay, what if we were to do this? And they have engaged with us. They actually told us they would prefer a private operator. And there are companies that are part of the Association of Independent Passenger Rail Operators, like Veolia and Herzog and First Transit and others who operate commuter services on contract. They want to expand their business and get into more services. So we started making contacts with people like that. And we also wanted to look at things like value capture around rail stations and development and how that could help fund the service. And then what kind of entity would we need to create in our region to operate all of this. So that's the track we've been going down, if you will. And we made some progress the last couple of years. One of the things that we did was we have started talking to a private partner, an organization out of Chicago called Corridor Rail Development, and their role, if they were to work with us, would be to provide passenger equipment and locomotives. They actually own a fleet that can be refurbished, much in the same vein as what North Carolina has done with their own fleet. They have said that they will provide an equity investment and serve as kind of a developer with us and a partner. And the next step, keeping some notes here. The next step on that is we got into last fall. We had continuing discussions with Union Pacific, and a piece that we really didn't have a good handle on is what is the capital up front going to cost here. We did know that we had a vision that we saw all of those federal programs that Derek talked about this morning. We said we weren't necessarily going to be entirely a private operation, but there may be some upfront capital that would help us get the service established. So we wanted to get a handle on what is it. Is it going to be 50 million? Is it going to be 100 million? Is it going to be 200 million? And we had a meeting with Union Pacific earlier this winter, actually towards the end of January. And we think we may have achieved what is somewhat of a breakthrough and a different way of approaching that. And that is, Union Pacific has been reevaluating their railroad. You may have heard that they're moving to precision scheduled railroading, but they're also looking at how they can use their assets more effectively. And they actually told us that they would consider a scenario under which they would evaluate the operation. If we were to pay a market rate for access to the railroad instead of the Amtrak rate for access, which the railroads all think is too low. They would be willing to consider making whatever capital investments were necessary to have passenger service on it. Now, keep in mind, we're starting with a railroad that's in pretty good shape, has some capacity. They've upgraded it for sand trains, that sort of thing. And they would work out a rate, and that would be negotiated in a 5-year agreement. That they would look at their railroad and say, what kind of passenger service could we establish here based on the railroad we have now? To do your 4 trains a day, what would we have to do? And they would consider making the capital investment necessary for that. So that was a pretty big deal. It's something some of us who followed this for a while have wondered if that could be done with a private railroad, so it's not a done deal yet. The next step is for us to actually bring on a consultant to do the evaluation. We met actually last week with HDR, which is a company that does a lot of this. They actually have done some of the RTC modeling for TCMC. They've worked on NLX and some other things. And so we are right now negotiating a contract with them where we would hire them to evaluate the operation of the track, what could be operated on it, what kind of adjustments could be made to the freight operations to accommodate passenger rail service, what kind of improvements would be necessary, and what would be the capital of that. So it would depend on what that report says in terms of what could be done, but it makes us very optimistic on where we can go forward. So that's a pretty big deal. We will have to put some money together to be able to fund that report. But we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars to get it started, perhaps. Obviously, we have to have equipment. We have to have other things in place. And also coordinating with, you're going to hear about Minnesota in just a couple of minutes, coordinating with what's going on with Minnesota and making this part of a system that might include TCMC, NLX, as well as the service to Eau Claire. So we're pretty optimistic about it right now. Still a lot of things to happen, so we don't make any promises. But we think that having a private operator that is market driven has the opportunity to squeeze some costs out and also to do a better job at gaining revenues, serving customer, having a higher customer experience. So I'm anxious to hear from John a little bit later because he's going to talk about the task force that he's been on. So I told him I would keep my remarks a little bit shorter, and I would keep them to 10 minutes, and I've still got a half minute left. So if anybody has any questions for us. Yeah.
Would your trains be running into St. Paul Union Station?
Yes. And obviously, that's owned by the Ramsey County Regional Rail Authority. They're interested in having lieutenants, and so we have been in discussions with them about participating in this.
How many people commute on a daily basis?
There is a very substantial, I didn't really go into that, not necessarily daily commuters, although there are daily commuters, especially from St. Croix County into the Twin Cities, but there is a substantial amount of commerce between Eau Claire and the Twin Cities. Just an example, one of the parts of revitalization of downtown Eau Claire is there's a software company called Jamf that has 200 employees. They also have 200 employees at their headquarters, at their other location in downtown Minneapolis. They have people going every day, and they, Royal Credit Union, which is a regional credit union headquartered in Eau Claire, has offices all the way into the Twin Cities, and they've said they would use it substantially. So you've got people actually are living in places like Baldwin and Menominee, and where one spouse works in Minnesota and the other spouse works in Eau Claire. So a lot of that going on. If you've ever been on 94 between Eau Claire, there's 100,000 people, that's my time there. There's 100,000 people, 100,000 vehicles crossing the St. Croix River on I-94 every day. So yeah.
Is much of this route single track now?
It's mostly single track. There is some double track. That's one of the things that we need to look at is if there it was double track years ago. So the railroad has the space. But one of the things they would have to look at is would need to extend any sidings, that sort of thing.
I'm going to just share a couple quick of my opinions. They're not always official statements, and I'm going to be really fast. I thought, I'll just ask you by a show of hands, I could talk about the climate in Minnesota. It's really, really changed. I could talk about, I have handouts for everybody that deal with the Capitol Rally to 3 points that we push selling reps and legislators. I could show you real quickly our handout that we gave to all the senators and reps on March 6th when we had the day at the Capitol. Or I could talk about, I just came up with like 6 or 7 ideas that you might consider to support the second train. And the fourth one is I have a PowerPoint, which is about 10 minutes, but I can't do that because I already made a promise. But that's our PowerPoint we gave to the legislators on March 6th, where we had 3 senators, 3 reps speaking, plus about 6 groups that were alliances to us, supporting us. It was wonderful. So I'm just gonna ask you real quick. Raise your hand if you want me to talk about climate in Minnesota, how it's changed. All right, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Political,
Just
not weather.
political.
Political, not weather, yeah.
Not the weather. No, I just came from Spud, St. Paul Union Depot, and I swear it's gonna float away, but it's not. And hopefully my car's still there, not underwater. Anybody interested in the handouts, I can hand everybody a copy of those things. They're like our press release, the 3 points, okay. If you want, you see me later, I'll hand you one. Then the ideas I had for your organization for the second training. Anybody interested in that? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, okay. If you want, you can ask me later too. And that's it. Okay, why don't I start with the climate real quick, guys. I just have 4 things. The midterms in Minnesota, these are probably more in my opinion, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but the midterms brought huge changes, in my opinion, because our houses are of different parties. And I think, John, you talked about the benefit of that, and I think it's a huge benefit. It doesn't matter which party you belong to, but we also have a more supportive governor that's thinking of the entire state, which is what my organization does. We're really about rural Minnesota more than we are about Minneapolis, St. Paul. But I won't go into that right now. But anyway, the new politicians that have come in are, I think, my opinion, they're more reasonable and they're more centrist, as opposed to extremes on either party. Just my take. And that's both parties, the new people that came in, and it's had an influence. I'm going to give you one example. Senator Senjum from Rochester, when I first started dealing with him, I didn't care for him, let's just put it that way. But I've had many dealings with him, and he is flipped in the sense of he's reasonable, he asks really good questions. Our group is basically a conservative group. We don't like wasting money, including taxpayers' money or my money. But at any rate, he is in the same boat for that. And so he would ask questions, and if I couldn't answer them, I'd farm them out to somebody else that in our organization that knew. So he has become I call him a skeptical, reasonable Republican. And so we just keep sending him the facts, not opinions, facts. And it's working because he's good friends with the president of the Senate. And that's another long story I won't get into today. And then the final 4th thing is the climate's changed in our organization. I think I have one with me. I took this little form, and I brought it to our last membership meeting. I passed it around. I said, anybody here interested in spending 10 minutes helping us promote the second train? I thought, I have 40, 50 people at our membership meeting. I thought I'd come back with 1 or 2 people on it. I filled up 4 sheets. 4 sheets. And I just holy buckets. And all of us did that was like, wow. And you could sign up for, say you like to call people. In this case, it was calling our members to call their senators or reps or whatever you would like to do. We try to channel to it or go to train day, whatever you like. And so it kind of blew us away. So at the Capitol, for example, just to give you one example, we had 6 ushers. So I met them early, and so I spotted them. If you've ever been in, I don't know what your Capitol's like. I don't think. Oh yeah, I have been in your Capitol. Yours is about the same size, but yours is, I think, a little less confusing because of the way you enter it. It's not. Ours is horrible because it's funny because the SOB building is this state office building. And on a lighter note, the Senate had a new building. They didn't call it the Senate office building. Catch the acronym. They called it the Minnesota Senate office building. But they come in through tunnels, and then they end up in this maze. So I spotted 3 people down there to get them up to our room. And then I had 1 person on each of the levels. And they just came, a half hour early, then they joined our group. So they were happy to do that. And I gave them a sign. And I gave him one of our buttons that we wore. And then, we're not going into much detail, our rally, we had all those people speaking. It was very powerful. In fact, one of my slides is from Ken Bueller from NLX. He showed up to the train to Duluth. We had senators, 3 reps speak, and then we had 6 alliance organizations, that people that support what we're doing speak. It was just boom, boom, boom. So our president was up in front, so I was kind of a logistics person. We had 3 doors, so I helped the senator come in the back door, I escorted him up to the front, and so it was just like, and it's really hard to get a politician sometimes to talk for 2 minutes, but then they're more apt to come, because they know they don't have to have this big speech. So that's it. I can answer questions. Maybe that's a better way to go, because that's our format and our outreach that actually we did with your organization in La Crosse in October. So anyway, maybe you want to fire questions at me, because I'm done. How did I do on time? 6 minutes?
You're okay.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just take questions for 4 minutes about Minnesota.
As far as that train going up to Duluth and whatever, are you gonna have to upgrade the right of way from the BNSF from St. Paula to up to Duluth?
I don't know the exact details of that. We, for our own sanity, because we're all volunteers, we have 1 or 2 people that are more the expert on that, and I'm not. I'm more of the coordinator, the person's out speaking with people sometimes. I can tell you the price tag to get that service, I was just talking to Aldine about that at the break, is approximately $360 million to get that thing rolling, and which is a big ask. We call it an ask of the politicians, because we've gotten, last year we got basically 0. But the world has changed. We had 1 bill in there, and it didn't get out of committee last year. This year we have 8 bills in the Minnesota Senate and House. So we've gone from that to this, and I was just sharing those with the room. So the world has changed. So for our organization, though, it's our NLX is our 4th choice because of the numbers. We feel the second train will help feed that, and perhaps feed other trains as well. Because the second train, every study we've looked at talks about how successful it's going to be, because it's going to be on time. I mean, to get here, I was with 100, 200 people waiting to get on the train. It was sold out. The Empire Building, and it was 4 hours late. Nobody left. I mean, I mean, nobody would do that for a plane.
Everybody builds that into their time schedule.
Well, in my case, it got to Portage at 4:20 yesterday instead of 12:30. Well, for me it worked, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Right.
But just think about that pent up demand. If it was on time,
Well, you know,
like which the second train will be.
right, you know, for years, back when they ran, the railroads ran the passenger trains, most of their losses weren't in the passenger train thing, it was in freight, like for the Milwaukee Road and Chicago Northwestern was actually losing more money on their freight service than they were on passenger service. And so, you know, it wasn't that people weren't running, that weren't traveling on the Hiawatha or the 400 or whatever. It was because the railroads, like Chicago Northwestern, Milwaukee Road, were losing more money on freight service than passenger service. That was just a convenient way to sit there and say, well, you know.
Yeah, I can talk about that all day. There's a great book, it's called Waiting on a Train, I think it's called. It's a great book, it talks about the history of Amtrak, and it talks about that. And what its position is, Nixon was trying to kill the trains,
Right.
then the Arab embargo came, and then all the people flooded to the train. That's another whole discussion.
Yeah.
But I didn't finish saying, though, but I was going to answer to LD's question too, and the other one. The second train is our priority, and we feel you need that second train to get the NLX numbers up. It also feeds into the North Star, which is really a commuter rail, and we've worked with them. Right now, they're really promoting, they have a young representative from there, so we've been working with him, but that's really a different funding mechanism. But if they build a new station, maybe we can build a new parking lot. So it's getting rather complicated, but exciting. And then, so our second wish is for the second train to be extended up to Moorhead, Minnesota. Not any further, absolutely not any further. Because the demand up in Moorhead is huge. Those people get out of the train at 3 in the morning. I'm always amazed how many people ride out of there. But then the third priority for us is getting the St. Paul train to Kansas City, that's via Des Moines, That's what I was asking Garrett about that. And then the final one, the fourth one for us is an election. Just because we're volunteers, I mean, if we had a paid staff or something, it'd be wonderful. Yeah.
You make use of any of the multimedia like Facebook or Twitter or?
We're starting to. We have a young man on our board, Matt, and he's also working with Move Minnesota, used to be called TLC, and we've just started doing that because he's really good at that. You know, he's like, and which I don't know how to do. So, yes, and I'm going to have an outreach at the university at Winona. They have 2 universities there, and that's part of our getting connected. So I kind of jumped. Two people left here this morning. They're from Minnesota, and they're young, as they alluded to.
Yeah.
So we need to listen to them, figure out how to connect with them. Do we have an answer yet? No, but that's coming. Our Facebook presence is improving.
You have a blog? You have your own web page?
Yeah, we have our own website. We were just blessed 2 weeks ago. It took us 4 months. We opened up a new website about 2 weeks ago. We had a very generous member who wrote us a really nice check because we don't have a lot of money. We're smaller than you are. But when somebody writes you a nice check, so it does things like when people join, it keeps track of their membership. They can do that, and it gives us a printout for the treasurer, so they have it instantly. They can still sign up by hand. It takes a little longer, but we also now can do like, we can send out information to reps and senators on an issue. And right now we have an email blast. I'm just telling, is it Sue? Sue. We have an email blast ready because the 2 bills, the ones I mentioned to Arun, the ones we have checked, they're about to have a hearing. So what we're going to do, let's pretend it's going to be on Tuesday. We're going to have an email blast to all of our members, and we're going to be there handing these buttons out. And you will be there and sitting in the hearing room. And if you have even 10 people there, they think it's a flood. Because not that many people call. They think if 10 people call them that there must be something major happening. So we're starting, but we're all volunteers, just like you.
Yeah.
How am I doing?
Good.
Good? Thanks.
Thanks.